Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aiden, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. And I'm very excited to do this. You have been on top of this AI stuff more so than most of the people that I know. I remember we were talking about AI in quite a lot of detail, like maybe the week after ChatGPT was launched. And I thought it was a really cool demo. And you're like, no, this changes the world. So I'm excited that we're gonna have this conversation. But maybe before we begin, you're currently the CEO at Assent Compliance. You want to tell us a little bit about what Assent does, and maybe just to give people a sense of the scale of Assent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aiden. So it's my 11th year, and we basically are a B2B enterprise SaaS business, and we bring transparency to manufacturing supply chains, transparency for regulations that impact the manufacturing industry. Some of those regulations are product compliance or product specific. Some of those, and so we call those environmental. Some of those regulations are sustainability topics around human issues, ethical topics. And some of those are just things that our customers are very important to them, knowing what's going on. So, whether it's carbon accounting in their supply chain, or whether it's knowing whether their supply chain suppliers are using PFAS. Which is a set of bioaccumulative toxic chemicals. And so our job is a system of digital facilitation between the suppliers and the customers in complex manufacturing. So, and just to your question of growth, so 10 years ago, we were below $1 million. And now we're, kind of halfway between 100 and 200 million, heading, very quickly to that kind of 200 million milestone ARR.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Very cool. So this is, the customers that you have, they have very complex supply chains. It's really hard to know, and they buy from like thousands of suppliers, I assume, right? Like there's thousands of relationships, and you basically help them make sense of it all and make sure that they're following all the rules they need to, they understand, have transparency, like you said. So yeah, very complex stuff.
Yeah, as an example, we won a customer in Q4 of 2024 that had 18,000 suppliers. Okay, 18,000. And we cover about 200 topics, but on average, we're working on, probably 15 topics of interest to our customers. And so that has to be done digitally and with software. As you know, Aiden, what we do is in some ways, a lot of SaaS replaces manual and spreadsheets. Okay. And there is an ERP system in almost every manufacturing. There is a PLM system in almost all manufacturing. This is what I call the third system, core system, to move information so the customers can say this is what they're looking for from their suppliers, and the suppliers can then provide the information, and we verify and validate that information. And then, as you could imagine, because we are building the LinkedIn of manufacturing, you can imagine how we could create efficiencies in the industry so that the supplier only has to submit once for all its customers, and the customer can come and get the vast majority of their suppliers when they're connected to the network.
Yeah, I like that idea of LinkedIn for manufacturing. Yeah, definitely it tells the story really well. So I want to make sure everybody kind of gets a sense for, obviously the type of business, the scale that you're at. I think you're over 1,000 employees. And so the thing that I want to start with is for a company, and you guys have been around for, like you said, 10 plus years. And so one of the first questions that I always like to start with is, how has AI impacted your business? So we started with that ChatGPT moment in, end of 2022. It's been just over, 2 years. Yeah, that moment happened.
Isn't that amazing just how much has evolved in 2 years? Like just the number of foundation models from 4 to over 4,000 today.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know it was 4,000 now. Yeah. A lot has happened.
Yeah, if you think about like even OpenAI, what do they have now? 6 models? Like you've got 4, you got 4.0, you got 3.5, like they're still active, right? So even, like the one company has like multiple versions, right? The chain of thought version, the optimized. So when I say 4,000, it's not all over are a lot of the Chinese and so on, but it
Oh,
is.
for sure. Yeah. I think like people forked DeepSeek maybe like 3,000 times or something like that, right? Yeah.
Remember Llama got forked as well. Yes, exactly.
I know you guys use AI in a bunch of different ways, but maybe from your perspective, because of AI, how does Ascent look differently today than it did 2 years ago because this AI moment happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it has been quite dramatic in terms of bringing a new technology into a business for both internal processes or improving the operating system, as I call it, and for attending to new product opportunities. As an example, we are in our lead investor, our major investor, our majority investor is Vista Equity Partners. Vista is run by Robert Smith. I remember the progression when I first talked about Gen AI. There was kind of a tepid interest. This year, Robert basically declared to his 98 CEOs, if you do not have specific delivery objectives on the product side or the operating system or process side with OKRs, you are not on the right side of Vista's ledger. In terms of so there's huge emphasis now.
So if you still want to be CEO, you better get those OKRs going.
Get those OKRs and the OKRs in a private equity context are very much bonus driven. So the OKRs are there for the operating system, but they're also there. That's how the CEOs are compensated. Okay, it's a very, very quantitatively run, kind of operating system perspective from Vista. Anyway, so there is enormous emphasis, pressure for delivery of real tangible. And so here's what I would say. The transformation, the fastest, and we were the first in the Vista portfolio, 98 CEOs. We were the first to adopt Copilot. GitHub's Copilot, which is really Microsoft. So we actually had to get some legal exemptions because there was concerns. You remember the early concerns about them?
Yeah, copyright. Are you stealing people's code? All those sorts of things.
And so those kind of all disappeared because most of the foundation model providers said that they wouldn't be using your data to teach the models. And that has become de facto, okay, of course. But we were one of the early users of Copilot, and we obviously have our entire team. And as you know,
and you were also, I was going to say, like one of the first, certainly in my network that I know that started using ChatGPT for business. Like when they first launched it, and you couldn't self-serve sign up, you had to contact them in order to get the enterprise licensing.
Correct. And so we were using it for a variety of use cases with regards to, synthesis is one of its most obvious. Okay. Take a 10-page report and tell me, give me a 1-page summary. But Aiden, one of the things, think about trip reports. I'll just give you this very specific example, although there are many. In fact, I want to tell you about a real fun one, but here's one. Trip reports expect everybody to be able to write. We do have a format, okay, and write well, but the degrees, the variation in quality of writing is horrendous, okay, to be blunt.
So this is when one of your executives or like team leaders, a salesperson goes somewhere. Okay.
So it's a requirement that I've had from day one, okay, because we spent money, you went, often customer, sometimes partner, often our subject matter expert team. And I want to distill that information back into the company. What did they learn and how does that come in? So we write trip reports. But the variation in quality is enormous. You put a trip report through a ChatGPT and tell it to improve the business language and the summary, and it does an amazing job. An amazing job. There's one example. I'm going to give you a funny one that came early on that was just, I had not thought of it and I thought it was just fantastic. We work on bills of materials. Okay. We need to test software out constantly, but we cannot use bills of material information. Aiden is very sensitive, very sensitive. It's like their recipe. Okay. It's like Coke's recipe. Okay. But for complex. So you can't just use somebody's bomb to test your stuff. And so one of our sales engineers had this idea. I wonder, and could ChatGPT generate a bomb? Or like truly an actual bomb, but a random bomb, right? So it doesn't have parts that make, that is a real recipe, but it was amazing what it could do. And all of a sudden, you could do all kinds of testing without exposing any of the customer's data, okay? Using a, generated bill of materials that really wouldn't make anything, but it looked like it did. Right. And that was one of the early use cases that I was like, that's super cool. Now we use AI in a variety of capacities now to clean up a lot of, we work with, we have 1,000 customers. All their data is in different states. Okay. And we have to get, manufacturer part numbers. We have to get, supplier part numbers. We have to, and it's one of the things about our business, Aidan, is that it's really, AI helps it enormously. We have an entity resolution. Is this the right supplier? Okay, to pull the information. We have a part resolution issue. Is this the part? Are these the right parts? Okay, and then is this the right document? And does it have all the information? And if you think about those three, okay, we also have an end tier issue. Which supplier supplies which supplier? But all these issues or puzzles, okay, AI, the current foundation models, help solve these issues dramatically easier, dramatically faster. So our business is more naturally honed to using these AI tools than maybe others are. But I would say all business, can benefit.
Yeah, super interesting. So sometimes when I think about like the impact that AI has for a business, in some cases it, by making things more efficient, it can make a company more profitable. So that's one angle. Another angle is that maybe it doesn't necessarily make things that you were doing much faster, but in the same amount of time you can produce much higher quality work. So it just increases like the basically the delivery quality. So how do you think about this? Like, do you think that Assent is a more profitable company because of AI, or do you think that your output quality has increased, or like what metric do you look at when you want to quantify the impact?
So this is an absolute core and key question that every analyst brainiac is trying to estimate, both at the aggregate economy level, the aggregate company level, and then at the individual productivity level. So I would say we're in a stage, there is no question in my mind, and I don't know how closely you followed the incredible pace of code generation. But code quality, code commenting, and this is really in the agentic world now. So you're going to have agents assessing code quality like really, really rapidly. But you've seen the IDEs as well, and you've seen these are some of the fastest companies: 400 million, Cursor, Bolt, Replit. There's a number of them.
Lovable, yeah.
Lovable, exactly. Okay, and there is no question that they are increasing the productivity of creativity. Now, there's a paradox here because basically if you're a junior programmer, you probably took, several hours to figure out why this thing wasn't working, and that's all done. Like that, all that tedium of you didn't have the right library or you didn't include the right, Git files or whatever. That's all definitely more productive. The question is, can you solve systems issues in an integrated way? So now is the whole output, it's not about, waterfall, or it's now, can you deconstruct whatever issues your customer is looking to solve? And can you move that velocity, that engineering velocity, collective velocity, not just the single piece of code? And as the token windows expand, Gemini is out with 2.5, which is apparently now challenging Claude. for coding. But it's the context windows, which Google is opening up enormously, which allows you to put a lot more code and context in. So I think there's no question in certain pockets. And then, like, I'll give you the second most largest use case beyond coding is customer support. And basically putting and you've seen the multimodal capabilities are really stunning. You put a multimodal interface on top of your RAG, with your specific, and you can get some really great deflection of your customer support team, which means they can be dealing with higher value conversations, more complex, because all the routine stuff is deflected using AI. Those are two obvious ones. But I would say, Aidan, that we will start to see and you see it in velocity, but we will start to see the impact in two big ways. One is, I think, the number of people that's required to handle X amount of ARR is going to go down, dramatically. And you've seen that in some startups, and I think the number of customers you can handle, in terms of delivering, like we run the sustainability programs. So what'll happen is you may not be removing people, but the scope of what they can handle expands. So instead of a CSM ratio being, let's say, 5 enterprise, that may become 10 enterprise, as these tools enable them to be prepared and organized around what their value delivery is for 10 customers instead of 5. So I do think you will see, and we are seeing it. It's not as fungible to always estimate. We try and use hours, and that's certainly one way. Headcount is another. We look at proficiency or productivity. And we are seeing some of that because we have a large services component, and we are handling more and more suppliers and more customers without increasing headcount significantly.
Yeah, and that's a story that I'm hearing more in certainly public companies as well. They may not necessarily like attribute it directly to AI, but they're saying things like, well, we only increased headcount by this much, but we increased revenue by a lot more than, what we did for headcount. And so, yeah, so that's really cool. And what's great to hear there is that, again, it is measurable. You have OKRs around AI at a company level. So, that's the first thing. But then the second thing is, and they're numeric too. So they actually, you are thinking about the impact on the business. It's not just like we're using this cool product. It's actually like making material change.
Correct. And it is like, so we have OKRs down to the functional and team level around AI. And so where it gets a little bit fuzzy is we try and turn it into hours saved. So, for example, we ingest, our suppliers provide us millions of documents, because we're dealing with hundreds of thousands, and we're dealing with many regulations. So you can just do, every regulation has a few documents, every supplier, so you can manage. So we know exactly what automated document review enables. So we knew the speed of the manual. And we have a team in Kenya who had been doing, document assessment, document review. And so we know what that costs. And then we know what the AI can do at the kind of 95% comparable. And, and you're seeing all these metrics in the AI world, right? Like, this is human intelligence. This is, programming. This is a programming measure. This is an AI measure. Now, it's often for attainment, not volume, but you're seeing the economies of scale in a variety of ways. And as you know, these models keep getting better and better, and they're getting faster as well as we figure out not just the token math, because the token math matters, but also the chain of thought and thinking. It gets them to better endpoints. And you're seeing this in code as well. Whereas, the code bars of quality, with a few iterations goes up quite dramatically.
Yeah. So one thing I was going to ask, and this is probably going to be very valuable to the audience, is I think like at Assent, you've done a really good job of getting more people to adopt AI across all functions. It sounds like OKRs is one way that you did it. But I wonder, are there other tips that you can share for companies who are like, the CEO is like, yeah, I agree. Like I tell people, but they just don't do it. Like, how did you encourage AI adoption at Ascent? What are some things that worked for you?
Yeah, so I think that is a really important question, okay? Because it's like a lot of things, right? You need to change habits, okay? People get comfortable with the tools that they have and the methods that they use. And so there is a shakeup. And if you remember, there's a gradient curve. There's always enthusiasts. There's always, like in this case, this CEO was the first, okay, literally the first person in the company to be aware, to assess, to drink and taste and love, okay, and then get a little, evangelism crazy. So that's good. There are what you would call the naturals. Now you have to distinguish those technologies that are fads from those that are fundamental. And I think I had good judgment about that. But to your question, I think first and foremost, the CEO and the C-suite has to lean in and they have to kind of understand whoever starts out being enthusiastic. Maybe it's your CIO, maybe it's even your HR person who starts using it personally. But you have to kind of understand, why are they so excited about this? Maybe I need to understand this more. Okay, so that the C-suite matters, and the CEO in particular helps the song get sung. Okay, if the CEO is not singing the song, then others go, well, he's not singing the song. Why should I sing the song, right? So how do you make it contagious? Couple of ways. One, find the evangelists in your company and celebrate them, and in some ways promote them. Okay, but the biggest way, so we've held a couple of things. We have had hackathons, AI hackathons, and we've had awards given out. We've had showcases which show people, because one of the things we discovered in the first 6 months is everybody heard the skeptical hallucination sewing, but people didn't have enough imagination or creativity. And that when they saw the use cases, like I didn't think of generating a bomb, okay? It just didn't occur to me. But when they see the use cases, it inspires. Okay. So it inspires, like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. It was one of the most common things I heard in the first 6 months. I didn't know it could. And I kept saying the word versatile and high value and utility, but people don't, until they discover it themselves. And so the more you showed people examples of it active and working. And so I would often evangelize at all hands these use cases which people had done, which were super kind of useful and validating. And I would also encourage people to share. So we created several Slack channels, but and that's where you could evangelize on the Slack channel. You could talk about what models are capable in doing what. And, Aidan, this, in every company, you're going to have let's call it a third to keep it simple. You're going to have a third that come on relatively easily and are enthused because of the CEOs and the C-level enthusiasm. You're going to have a third who kind of, can be swayed. And then you're going to have a third that are somewhat skeptical, somewhat passive. And you just have to keep pushing the message and the importance and the value. And then, as you pointed out, in 2025, the OKRs came deep into the organization, and you had to have specific AI OKRs.
Yeah, I love the idea of using OKRs for this. We don't have OKRs on AI, and I think it's a great idea. And I think I'm gonna take that one and adopt it. Yeah, that's a really good one. So Andrew, I also wanted to ask you about how you personally, use AI in your work. One of the things that's super interesting about you is that you dedicate a lot of time personally to keep up to date. You actually invest the time. You're on top of, you subscribe to a whole bunch of newsletters, a whole bunch of like YouTube channels, so on and so forth. But so what are some ways that you use AI today? And I wonder if you have some examples or maybe one that we can also show the audience here.
Sure. Like I'll use one very recent example, but I use it every day, obviously in different forms. I use it to synthesize. Obviously, as a CEO, I'm sent a lot. Okay. That's an obvious use case. Just give me a one-page summary. Okay. When I saw some trip reports being quite poorly, let's say rushed and written, I couldn't read them. Like there's several pages, 4, 5, 6 pages. I was like, I can't read that. So I threw it in. I asked it to rewrite it with professionalism. And then I asked it to write a one-page summary. And then I sent it back to the person who wrote it and said, which one would you rather read? Okay. So there's a lot of what I would call synthesis. There's obviously now, Aiden, this deep research is really cool. Really cool. Now, the different models are doing deep research in different ways. I have found Perplexity's stunningly good. And it's because you could burn a lot of tokens with deep research. So what they've done is they parameterized it such that you ask it to write a report on a certain subject, and it does a certain amount of work, but it says it'll take 30 minutes. Generally, it comes back in around 5 to 6 minutes, and then it gives you a bunch of questions you may want to go deeper. Okay, so I do like that proportion. They're generally about 5 or 6 page reports. I'm doing over a dozen deep research a day on a whole variety of things. If I was interviewing this person, I hadn't had time to prepare. So I just asked for a deep research on this person, and it gave me I asked them after the interview to take a look at it. And they said, yeah, in fact, it had information they did not know was public, because obviously it's using public information. But one that I used recently, Aiden, was I meet all new team members after they join in about a month or two. And I met this director of product management. And as I was listening to his background, and as I was listening and thinking about and being empathetic to his challenge of getting to know Assent's context, I was like, oh my God, you have a tough job. Like that's what was going through my head. Okay. And then I thought, and I asked him, have you done, and I just had this idea pop into my head, have you done any job shadowing here? And he goes, no, that would be really good. And I said, have you met? And I'd name the 2 VPs for the customer side, the supplier side. And he goes, no, but thank you. And he wrote them down. And I fortunately and coincidentally was talking to a new EX business partner after. We call employee experience for HR. And I said, do we do job shadowing in our onboarding? She goes, no, that's a great idea. And so this was really noodling around in my head. And so right after I got done my interviews, I went and did a deep research report. And can I just show you quickly?
Yeah, that'd be great. But I just want to, like, as you pull this up to show, wow, you do 12 to 15 deep researches a day. That's a lot. That's really cool. I feel like, these companies probably make money on some people and lose money on some. I feel like they lose money on you.
Don't tell anybody, please. Okay, because you're exactly right. While the going's good, I paid the $20 a month. So can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this was my deep research. Write a report on best practices doing job shadowing for new employees in a remote work environment, B2B SaaS. Nothing more complicated, Aiden. Nothing more complicated. And I could take you through this, and you will see best practices for, okay, understanding remote job shadowing, defining virtual job shadowing, right? Because, right, it's not normal job shadowing, right? Where you could sit at their desk for a week, okay? Why job shadowing matters, benefits, okay, for host employees and organizations, type of virtual job shadowing for B2B SaaS, observation-based shadowing, regular briefings, hands-on virtual shadowing, setting up a remote job shadowing program. Think about this, right? It's writing you a script. Pre-boarding preparation, structure the program, select and train participants, implement best practices, leverage the right technology, structure. See this? This is crazy, right? I didn't know anything about job shadowing. I don't know why it popped into my head, okay? But I knew very little about the topic. And this allowed me to, and obviously I read through this, I send it to my EX person, and we're almost like 10 yards ahead, 100 yards ahead of where we would have been if we just kind of tried to do this ourselves. Now, let me show you what I really love about that.
And by the way, like at the top, it says sources 38. So it basically checked out 38
and 27
different
steps. Do you see that?
Yeah. So this is again like in the world before you had access, maybe you would get a junior employee to say like go research job shadowing to figure out what's out there so that maybe we can implement something. And maybe that's like a week or 2 week task and then they create a presentation and then show it. Like this legit might have been a 2 week process.
Correct. No, I'm glad you pointed that out. That's exactly right. But here's what I like about Perplexity. Okay, and maybe I shouldn't be sharing this because my free token or my low token or my high token use low cost. But here's what I really like. Okay, is I've got several reports. So um, so then it gives you questions. I've actually asked a bunch of questions. So it gives you 4 or 5 from the research, and it's kind of saying, hey, I know more stuff. Do you want to know? Do you want to go deeper? Do you want more? And so how can job shadowing be tailored to different roles within a B2B SaaS company? Oh, I like that one. Okay. So it then goes away and you can see it did 2 steps, 8 sources. Okay. So what I love about this is it limits, okay, yes, 38 sources, yes, 27 steps, but this didn't take 4 hours. Okay. This took about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. But then it says, do you want me to go further? I'll go further. And and every time it does, it gives you new questions. Okay. And so you can go as deep or not as deep as you want. Okay. Now, to be a balanced evangelist, this was really, really great for me. It was fantastic. If you go into certain areas that are limited in what they have available out there in the foundation models, it will tend to regurgitate. In other words, when the sources are minimal, it tends to write a report, which is okay, but it then regurgitates like the same 5 or 6 things in slightly different ways. So, it's not perfect, okay, but is it incredibly helpful and informative? Yes, okay, because like a lot of things, Aiden, these are tools. And what I would say is, does it get my head and me articulating to my team what I would like to do and get them farther ahead? It does. Does it mean that we shouldn't use our own brains, okay, and cater it a little bit more to how Assent works? Of course we should. So human always in the loop, right?
Yeah, I love this, and thank you for showing this to us. So this was with Perplexity. Can you also just maybe tell everyone, when do you use Perplexity? When do you use ChatGPT? Like, is there a framework they use for these things? I go here, and for those, I go there.
Yeah, it's a great question, and that heuristic isn't fully, but for deep research, I've found Perplexity is the best. Okay, for what I'm looking for: speed, simplicity, cost, etc., and the format and everything. Okay, for ChatGPT, I use that still because that is our default system. So Perplexity, we're approved for security reasons on ChatGPT because we're using the enterprise that they've signed the right SOC 2 and all the requirements. Perplexity, I only ask it questions, so I never put any information in from Assent. So it's more of like, could you intuit what I'm asking? Maybe you could, but it's more of just doing research on what's out there. So those are 2 differentiated use cases because, every company, Aiden, does have to think about where the security issues are for their AI tools. And we have a fairly rigorous, very rigorous approval process to ensure no data leakage. Okay. But I just wanted to make a point to your question. As I learn these foundation models and where they're kind of stepping up, like you heard this weekend, 4.0 just got an incredible update on its picture generation. So did I start using that right away and send some pictures out to my team? Because I came up with this tagline: Assent, human agents leveraging AI agents.
I love it. Yeah.
So I needed a picture. I needed a picture with that tagline. So,
yeah, it was really good. I was showing it to Amanda, my wife, and immediately she's like, take this window and put these curtains on it. And I'm like, oh no, this is going to cost me. So yeah, lots of creative use cases. So one thing I wanted to make sure, as we only have few minutes left to go, is what are some of the sources, like just if you were to maybe list some things that you find valuable that you use to keep up with AI and all this stuff that's out there? How do you keep up?
So the very first one, okay, and he has this funny little advert called "Did you get the memo?" I don't know if you remember, there was the, I think it was, if it wasn't in The Office, but anyway, there's this movie, this iconic moment, I got the memo. So it's actually out of New Zealand, but it's probably the best. It's used by all the biggest companies now, including Google, Microsoft, and so on. So it's called Life Architect. And he was chairman of Mensa. And these are the gifted kids program. And then when he saw AI emerging, so he's got a newsletter, he's got a Patreon channel, so I paid, I think it's like $150 a year, but he's got one of the best systems of evaluating where we are in the AGI, ASI, and he tracks all the foundation models, if you can believe that. So he's a huge one. It's called The Memo. You got to get The Memo. But then there's quite a few, I would say I've got half a dozen tagged or, YouTube channels of folks that are deeply immersed. What differentiates for me is they often do things. Okay, so this one that I follow, which I think I've shared with you, and you can put it in the links. He actually kind of really uses the latest tech, always with examples, okay? But if he's figured out a way, so he demonstrated Cursor, he demonstrated how to create your own website, demonstrated how to, what I like to see with these YouTubers is pushing what is in the realm of the possible, because then that gives you ideas. Oh, I could maybe try doing this. And you see the potential. Instead of people just telling you about stuff, they show you. I got so energized. I started actually setting up on my laptop at home, not my work laptop. Can't do that, security reasons. But I started setting up Cursor, and I wanted to, write programs myself. You've heard this term, vibe programming?
Yeah, vibe coding. Yeah, it's great. I've been doing it too.
So, I am a geek at heart, and I'm just so amazed at how quickly this stuff is moving. And to keep up, you kind of have to participate more than just, listening and be told. So, anyway, so the YouTube is obviously a big way we learn things, and then, obviously the network. So Vista shows us best in class, or they show us what other companies are doing. They're sharing content with us from other companies, and that then helps you. So I think you need to be talking in a community of folks. For me, it's CEOs at other Vista companies, and you start to see, wow, that's a great idea. We should be doing that. Oh, and then obviously Aidan, McKinsey's writing about this all the time. A lot of the top tier consulting firms are putting out, best practice pieces on AI. And actually the one I shared this morning, which is really good, Andrew, do you know Andrew Ng at out of Stanford? Oh my God. He's I listen to everything he does on his lectures, he's big on now how the agentic is going to, but I educate myself a lot through Andrew's, LinkedIn and so on.
Yeah, Andrew's great. He wrote the original, he had the original course on Coursera on machine learning, which I took, which was really cool. Yeah. Awesome. So for all the listeners, thisnewway.com, sign up to the newsletter. We'll include all of these links, and also how to do deep research on Perplexity. And with that said, Andrew, what are you most excited about in 2025? Agentic.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited about the path has not slowed down, Aidan. The path of capability and the empowerment of what people can do, that to me is what exciting is. It's not slowing down as people thought it would. Yeah.
And that's a great place to end it. Andrew, thanks so much for doing this.
Okay. Great talking to you again, Aidan.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.